44% of American teenagers say that they're likely to use AI tools when completing assignments. That's according to a recent Education Week survey. And that's just one of the reasons why the largest school district in New Jersey is bringing the technology into the classroom.
New thinking. The world of education is in a state of flux, but now accelerated by the role of artificial intelligence. A poll of 1,000 college students showed that almost 90% of them use the chatbot to help with homework. The question today is not are students getting help from AI, but are they doing any of the work?
This is a new technology. It's here to stay. And if we just try to block it, the kids are going to get ahead of us.
Because they are going to use it. We should, as professors, I think we should teach differently. If I say my students, okay, please read this text and compare with this text for tomorrow, they can put all in ChatGPT and they have a wonderful text. They don't learn anything. But the job is done. Each day you have new tools about AI. We live in a time of paradox, I think, because we are more connected than ever, but we often feel isolated in a way. We should develop creativity and critical thinking, and this could be a solution.
And welcome back to another episode of the 100-Year Podcast. My name is Adario Strange, and this week we have with us Sarah Chardonnens. Do I have that right? Did I say it? Did I finally nail it? Did I nail the name right?
Yeah, that's right.
She hails from Switzerland. She is a pedagogue, a teacher, a music professional, and she is with us today to talk about her book, The Learning Revolution. What's the subtitle? And explain the subtitle.
AI's influence on intelligence and education. It's subtitle.
So the book came out, I believe it was April 29th. So as of this recording, it's been out a few days, so it's still brand new. So if you get a chance to check it out on Amazon, please check it out. Give it a read and a rate. Hopefully you'll understand a little bit more about what you're getting into by the end of this discussion. I'm curious, Sarah. So, when I started diving into this book, the first thing that kind of struck me was why. Because I've read some of your other work, or I've perused some of your other work, and most of your work seems to be kind of focused in the music area and the general learning arena, not so much in technology and AI. So I'm just curious, what was the spark that kind of led you to kind of say, okay, I have to approach this. This is something I have to attack.
Yeah. The first step was, I think, I've always been fascinated by the moment when a student suddenly gets it, when something clicks. And it's not just a brain activity, it's emotional for me, because as a musician, I was looking at this with my pupils, and it's relational. How do you say it? It's difficult to pronounce. And the book I've written is the continuation of a journey that I started with my Ph.D., with my doctoral research. My Ph.D. focused on understanding the learning process in a way linked with cognitive science, psychology, and of course pedagogy. And I wanted to know what help us learn and how does it work in our brain, and what role does attention play, or emotions and memories, and how can the teacher, because I'm a teacher for teachers, so how can the teacher help the student learn independently? It was about autonomy. And then something changed because AI, ChatGPT comes, and I was finishing my PhD. I was writing and make corrections. And then it was ChatGPT, and that was a colleague of mine. So I saw him in the cafeteria, and we have tried of ChatGPT chatting and try some research subjects, very high level things, or music, compose music, and we have experienced it a little bit. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm afraid of AI." And it didn't mean science fiction, it mean ChatGPT and all these recommendation systems. So yeah, that was the beginning. I was thinking about, oh, that's right. And if this happens, how can we human brain adapt us with this technology. That was the spark you
Okay,
talk about.
so you just mentioned something earlier that I wasn't quite aware of. So you said you're a teacher's teacher. So are most of your students actual like they are teachers, or do you have kind of like what's the age range of the people you instruct generally?
The age range is between 20
Hmm.
and 26, maybe.
Okay, okay.
So they
Okay,
are,
so some of those people are moving into teaching as well. Okay.
yeah.
So walk us through the book. I know I want to get deep into the book and kind of talk about your concepts, but talk to me about this. There's this acronym that you have in the book called synapse. And we all know that I'm not, a neuroscientist or anything, but when we talk about synapses, we think of the connections uh, within our brains that help us think. But you have I guess, an acronym associated with this to help us understand where you're coming from with the, I guess, merging between AI and normal education. So, what is that?
That's interesting. Of course, synapse is connections. Connections means in our brain, but that's sensory input, then network adaptation, participation, and then storage and embodiment. These
Hmm.
are all the words, and it means my synapse model is a framework to understand how we learn as a dynamic process, and we have 4 phases. So the first one is the sensory input, the second one is network adaptation, the third is participation, and the last one is consolidation, storage, and embodiment. That
Hmm.
means that's the meaning of synapse. Yeah.
So, talk to me about this idea, like toward the beginning of the book, where you talk about convergent intelligence. I think of, when I personally use AI, I'm using it as a tool, not as a replacement for my own intelligence. And I know there's this concept, and we have spoken about it on this podcast in the past, which is it's called a transhumanist, and a transhuman, where they, maybe are cybernetic, whether it's, through their limbs or through their mind. So when you talk about convergent intelligence, like, just kind of break down basically what do you mean by that? What is like what is the context of that within the framework of AI and education?
The context is based on this synapse model. We have with based on maybe 300 researchers I've studied and practiced and I've seen and analyzed. Um, this was the ground of the synapse model, and this synapse model explains how the brain functions when we learn. So maybe first of all, before we can speak about AI and brain, I should explain how the brain function. If you have time, I don't know if you're
Yes, yes,
interested.
yes.
For example, that's the first sensory input. That's the activation of the learning. That's the first step. When your attention is caught, when you are going to you feel things, you have emotions. That's the very first step of learning, and this is when you became awake and curious, the first spark activation. And the second phase is adaptation. Here, that's very famous. You are practicing the brain process, what it receives, it compares, contrasts. You need to adapt to make exercise. This is the real learning. When you understand learning like that, this is the second phase. And you are building bridges, and your brain make new neural pathways or new connections. The third is the like a tower control, because you are this is when you reflect on your own learning. So you adjust, you see, oh, this strategy isn't working, I need to make it differently, or I should practice this or try another one. The way to learn needs to think about how to learn. That's metacognition. And the last phase, to learn really deeply, we need to consolidate. And finally, it becomes part of your long-term memory. It becomes like a skill set. It will be automatic learned. So that's the reason why you can drive a car, for example. You don't need to be concentrate to drive a car because you have consolidated and you have practiced a lot. And all these 4 phases can be helped, can be influenced with AI. And that's the core theme of my book, to explain when AI does this kind of things. If you take, for example, Duolingo, the app adjusts and can guide you to pass about the difficulties step by step, and this is good. It's smart, it's efficient, but in that process, and one risk about Duolingo is that you become passive. You're not truly thinking about what you're doing, and you follow the machine. That's useful, but it doesn't lead to a deep learning. And what's missing in Duolingo, for example, is reflection, active engagement, and real drills and memory consolidation. And these are the 4 pillars. It's not the 4 steps on my synapse model. It's something different. Really to learn, you have 4 pillars. When you are learning, when you want to learn efficiently, you need first attention. It means you need to be focused. The second one is you need to be active engagement. You have to work the information, to practice. The musician, for example, is practicing a lot, though he is active in his mind too, to reflecting what I am doing. This is not just passively received information. The third is the immediate feedback, because when you learn, you are not sure, you have some doubts. And if you don't have a confirmation, yeah, that's right, go ahead. This helps a lot to feel sure, to have good emotions, and so you can learn. And the last one, when you repeat a lot what we have learned several times, spaced over days. For example, you have Ebbinghaus, that's a researcher, a German, very old man, a long time ago. He was making some research about memory and how can you fix things in memories. So that was it's very famous, and I'm speaking to and explain this too in my book.
So the next thing I wanted to ask you about was the idea of emotions and learning. This is something I'm particularly interested in with regard to the idea of introducing AI into education, because I mean, AI can pretend to have emotions. It can mimic emotions. And when you actually speak to a human instructor, a human teacher, you actually get that real feedback, that emotional kind of validation when you've actually learned something. There's nothing like it. It's like it's like a dog with a treat. You're like, oh yes, I've made you happy, teacher. Thank you. It's a special moment when you know you've reached a new milestone in education and you get real feedback. So I feel like at least that, from my vantage point, that's kind of the emotional component to learning. I mean, is that what you're referring to? Did you have like a different, I guess, perspective? Like, what do you mean when you talk about emotion and learning?
Learning is emotional. I think it's inseparable. So you need to have emotion to learn, because you have in the motivational dynamics. You want to achieve a goal, for example, or you need to be sure, oh, I can do it. If not, we will. It's there is no motivation. And I mean, feelings, emotion, the educational emotion is very important to learn. And that's the reason why maybe with AI it's difficult, because the AI is not a teacher. The AI is a machine that can think and cannot think, but can analyze your answers and can make some proposition and to guide you. But I don't know if I could say it, but if we could make an AI with a capture that analyze your movement of the eye, a second one with your posture, how's your sit, or like that, and the third one with your mimic, and to analyze all your faces. It's not enough because you
Mm.
need also the emotion of the student. So when I was teaching clarinet, it was really clear to me when the pupil began to play, and I heard in the sound, in the phrase, in the art to interpret the pieces. Oh, is not good. Is it didn't practice enough. It don't feel sure, and you develop with the experience. A teacher with experience develop some skills about this. And these, I don't think that the AI can catch all this information that we have. I mean, communication is more than just words.
Yeah, it's nuance. A lot of nuance involved in the exchange. I'm curious though. I didn't really ask you this, but I should now. Like, so where do you stand in terms of AI in the classroom? Are you a proponent of maybe allowing students to use AI for homework? Are you in favor of having AI in the classroom? Are you against AI teaching students solo? Do you think it's better for students and teachers to work collaboratively with AI? Like, where do you stand on that? Because right now there's kind of like a debate happening in education as to like how much AI should AI be involved at all. Like, where do you stand specifically, like in terms of like the actual practical use or non-use?
We cannot go against AI. I think it's everywhere. So we need to adapt and to think with our brain and ethically. That's the reason why the AI Act in Europe was made. So, for example, in music, I was last for a few weeks. I was teaching music didactics to my students, and they should compose a music piece for children. And so we explain they don't have a lot of capabilities technically to play on the piano, though they don't feel good, my students, this in this class. But I said with a few notes it's possible. So let's try. You take xylophone, piano, and try. Please try. Just go and try with instruments. And when they were practicing with piano and guitar and xylophone, I took my computer, I go to ChatGPT and Suno and some stuff, and I ask the same thing to a AI to just to compare.
Mhm.
And it was bluffant. It was very incredible because AI can compose original pieces in seconds, and I it was frustrating because I as a musician I was practicing so much, and that's the reason why we cannot to answer your question, we cannot say to the students, oh, don't use AI because it's a fantastic tools, but we need to use it with objective. For example, the music was um, for a class with little children, so we can adapt and find maybe some solutions.
This is fascinating because like I know there are electronic musicians and hip hop musicians, pop, producers who are using Suno, and of course a bunch of amateur users of Suno. I'm very curious, as someone who is, you've played in orchestral environments, classical music, kind of, at least here in the States, we view classical music as kind of like, well, I would say classical and jazz, but I would say globally, classical is kind of viewed as like the hard, rigid standard of like, top tier uh, music composition. So I'm curious, like, do you, like, since you've used Suno, I mean, do you think there's a future in music? I mean, what do these if I'm 13 years old, how do you get me to learn how to play oboe or bass or violin when Suno exists? I mean, I'm curious, what's your take on that?
I think what music what makes music powerful is not just the music. That's the way to express emotions, and to the pleasure you have to play with an instrument, to practice, and to make little progresses. That makes fun, I think. And I believe music and humanity will always be connected, because we can use machines to compose, of course, and it's to perform, but we need to express ourselves, and this is communication. I think that to have a concert, a live musician, it's not the same. And it will stay, I think. And I mean, at Mozart has copists, for example, to compose music. He had people that were waiting for him. Then came the printing press, and then came music notation with, maybe a Sibelius Finale or MuseScore. There are some programs, softwares to compose music. And now you have AI tools that can generate music. So music has always evolved with technology, and I think it's not a danger, but it's changed the way of human creativity, maybe.
One example to your point, one example I always like to give is hip hop, or specifically rap music. When it first emerged, at least sampling, because in the beginning it was just breaks, like people taking two existing records and playing the breaks and stringing them into like into a full song. But once sampling emerged in the 80s, it became its own art form. And I remember early on, there were people who were opponents of sampling. They felt that sampling was cheating. It wasn't real music. But then over time, people began to use sampling, particularly in hip hop, in a way. Well, also, it wasn't just hip hop. We also had groups like Kraftwerk, and other, electronic groups that they use sampling to kind of craft things that could not be created necessarily through traditional instrumentation. Um, and so I kind of, the optimistic part of me hopes that that is what we will see with AI tools like Suno and all the other tools coming out. And also, this makes me think of I actually mentioned this in our previous podcast. Bjork, the Icelandic singer, she's actually, from what I understand, working on an album right now where she's using AI in part to compose the album. And I know she's not new to AI. Actually, she it was either 2019 or 2020 where she actually composed a work, I think in collaboration with Microsoft, where she used AI for audio installation. But Björk, I think, is kind of unassailable. You cannot question her credentials as a musician. So if she's using AI, I think other creatives kind of have the green light, to kind of not feel guilty about it. I guess my big concern is cheating. If you just kind of use it to kind of like lazily slap things together and I guess almost compose elevator music at some point. I mean, do you? So you think we'll always have that connection? You're not worried that the music industry, the music business, will just become flooded with like AI dominated compositions and records? You're not. That's not a concern.
It's a difficult question. I think a friend of mine, just an example, a friend of mine is a very famous jazz guitarist. He plays with Whitney Houston, with Frank Sinatra, and so. He was the teacher of my son at the conservatoire, and he said me, my father was a violinist. He played the violin in the orchestra, and that was classical music. And he, as young man, wanted to make jazz. And for the father, it was not good, because jazz is not music. Jazz is and I play jazz too. I think it's a fantastic music art. And for the next generation, jazz was not good for the father. And Francis told me he has a son, and his son wanted to be DJ. and he has the same reaction that the next generation, that's, I think this is an evolution, and we need
Mm.
to the creativity and the fun to express, and the drive to practice and to express, this stays. But I see a second problem. At the beginning, we had in the music industry, you had some label, famous edition, and they were choosing the great artist, the person who has a voice, or this kind of, good quality was selected. And with the possibilities on internet and all the stuff we have, we can everyone can be a musician in his room with a computer, and that makes a lot of informations, a lot of music, and the quality is very difficult to find. The best one is not really the one who is good or can express himself. Maybe the best one is who paid more to project for the production. So it becomes difficult in this way, I think. And
Y-
that's we have a question: what is a good music? And I don't
mm.
have the answer.
You
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you completely. I think this so in the radio, I used to work in radio, FM, AM, and what we've seen over the last couple of decades is that they've gone to these automated DJs where, it's basically a computer playing the music on the radio station.
Mhm.
And I guess, to some degree that was done for efficiency and costs. But this conversation is making me, remember that, the curator, the person who selects is really kind of what you want. You don't just want, I mean, even right now you have on YouTube, you have these channels dedicated. I saw a channel yesterday. It was the Blade Runner radio channel. And it was just all of this music just slapped together that vaguely sounds like the score to the film Blade Runner. But that's very different compared to something like this is an American radio station that I'm assuming you're not familiar with, but there's a radio station, a famous radio station here called KEXP, and I think it's Seattle. I know it's on the West Coast, and their DJs are amazing. I think there's KCRW. There's a bunch of them, like the Columbia radio out here, the college radio stations. These people have introduced me.
What 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 makes it amazing?
So
For
these
you,
people,
serious. That's a
so
question.
no, so exactly. So
It's
you
amazing.
you pointed out how hard it can be to find good music, particularly in this new environment. Well, even before AI music, what I found is that just I used to work in the music business. I used to do A&R, artist and repertoire. So I'm pretty good at finding and picking music, but there's just so much. It's very difficult. And there's nothing like a very talented DJ showing you, an obscure artist that you've never heard of. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, particularly KEXP, where I'm just like playing it in the background and they play something and I am doing very important work unrelated to music. I'm doing like, some writing or research. I stop everything. I'm like, oh my God, who is this? Who did they just play? And that generally doesn't happen when you kind of have automated systems just playing, a jukebox, carousel of music.
So it means
So
it means the creativity of the DJ, is much bigger than the algorithm of the AI tools.
right, right,
But
exactly.
but maybe it's also your brain. You are formatted in a way. Your brain, your connections in your life, particularly you, not your brother or. I mean, you have a sensibility, and you
Yeah,
are reacting to this sensibility. That's
right.
also maybe. I was in a concert festival, and they have it was maybe, I don't know, 10 concerts, each group 10 minutes, and they have a lot of different styles of music, and the people in the crowd, they were eating and looking on the smartphones, and what I found as good music they didn't listening to. And when for me this kind of music was awful, was just whoa, not interesting. They were all the people, young people, they were really interested and
Mm.
attentive to this kind of music. And so I realized, oh, I'm an old one. Or
I mean,
maybe,
it's just it's taste. Everyone has different tastes. That's
Yeah,
all it
that's
really is.
also, yeah.
Because I mean, I know young people who listen to 1940s jazz, for instance. Um, I know there are people who are still into 80s punk, for example. So you know, it's just taste. You know, I never slot it according to age, but age is part of it because I think this is actually kind of the challenge with regard to AI and learning. This is part of the challenge a lot of instructors, professors are facing right now, is that they are so rooted in their old training and their old, you know, and how they were kind of brought up and trained, that it's very difficult for many of them to kind of wrap their mind around the idea of using AI as a I don't know, assistant or help or allowing their students to do the same. I mean, what in your university? I didn't name check your university because I my French is so bad, so I didn't want to mess up the name. But say your the name of your university and also kind of tell me what are the reactions of other professors to AI? What are their opinions generally in the professor community at your university?
as in French, Université de Fribourg,
Mhm.
Freiburg University. Um, it's difficult to explain. I think it's everywhere a problem because we don't know where. Each day we have new you have new tools about AI. We have too much informations. It's very difficult to us for us to teach and to develop some skills, some good lectures. So we live in a time of paradox, I think, because we are more connected than ever, but we often feel isolated in a way with all these informations, and we have access to an unlimited informations, but we struggle to focus, and this is difficult for the students. I mean, and this smart machines, AI, we have, as I said, the friend of mine, the professor, we become fear about this because you can we have the sense, the impression that the machine is, we become less intelligent than the
Mm,
machines, you know.
mm.
And this is the point. I mean, we should to took this technology like a tools.
What percentage, let's just say 100% of the professors at your university, what percentage of those professors are positive about AI?
Oh,
And what a-
it's really difficult to answer. I We should make a research study.
I know you're an academician, so
No,
you appreciate precision, but I mean casually, if you just had to guess, what percentage do you think are positive? Like they are actively planning on using AI, they're not worried about it, they think it's fine. What percentage casually do you think?
we need to be more precise about the question. I mean, you have people, all people are interested in AI because ChatGPT and the tools are very interested. So we have a L Tech studio, and we have connections and informations. A lot of things are growing up about this, and to help professor and students, and also to make researchers. So I mean, that's a good way to develop this thing. But it's also, you have a lot of people that are close the eyes and think, oh no, I don't want to use it, I'm afraid, or it should be not good because it's not good to learn. And you have also this kind of people, but it's very difficult to answer.
Majority or minority? Do you think a majority of professors at your university
I
are
think
negative or
majority,
positive?
yeah, I think majority is using it, but
Okay.
as a professor, minority is going to say it aloud and say, okay, yeah, I use it and it's a good tool. And yeah,
Mm.
they are very, because researchers and scientists needs um, something solid. And the
Mm,
AI is so quick to develop that we don't have enough studies to show
mm,
the effects and so. And that's the reason why I wrote the book too. It was to put all the ideas and the problems and the risk and the benefits too about AI,
mm,
and to have some studies, of course, but there are not enough studies yet. So the scientists and the researchers and the university professor are very careful with this, of course. Our research needs so much time to have
mm.
application, to have solution and something, something solid. And AI is so quick. So
Yeah, there's no time. There's no yeah,
yeah,
so yeah. Usually in the academic world, something happens, whether it's scientific or philosophical, and it happens. Maybe a paper is published or some study is conducted, and then that information is there, and then a bunch of other scholars will jump on that research and study it for the next 10, 5, 10, 15 years, maybe longer. That's not you can't yeah, AI is moving too fast for that.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that totally makes sense.
And that's the reason why I think we should develop so other skills, soft skills,
Mm,
and
mm,
we should develop um, how to learn, how to know about this, how to reflect about the tools, and not. Yeah, that's. I think that's the solution.
mm,
I think it's Stephen Johnson that's talk about AI Wrangler. You know,
mm,
that's
mm.
a good picture, I think.
One topic that you talked about in the book, which is superficial or the dangers of superficial learning. And I want to read specifically something you wrote. You said, rapid access to information via AI can encourage superficial memorization to the detriment of construction of deep, interconnected semantic networks. So I absolutely understand what you're saying, but I want you to kind of explain it to the listeners and the viewers. Specifically, just I'll just give the shorthand from my vantage point. Before AI, what I started to see is a lot of people offloading their thinking to Google. So you ask them a question and they just didn't even think, I'm just going to Google it. Kind of in the same way, prior to the smartphone, a lot of people would memorize telephone numbers. Now people don't memorize telephone numbers anymore. I'll give another example. When I moved to Japan, um, a couple of years later, the iPhone came out and I got it. And, I started using the maps function. It was rudimentary at the time, but, it was
GPS
cool.
system, yeah, it's famous.
Yeah. So I moved back to the States, and for whatever reason, I had become accustomed to using these smart technologies in Japan, but not in the US. So when I moved back to the US, I was somewhere. I was trying to find some particular building. Now I'm from New York, so I don't really get lost. I was just looking for, hey, do you know where such and such building is? And I just asked a random stranger, which is very normal here in New York. It's not, it's not rude. But I asked this person, and I think this was like 2012, 2013. And the person looked at me like I was crazy, like, don't you have a smartphone? You know, and it's like everyone has like offloaded their thinking to the machines now. So I see that with Google, and now my big concern is that may happen with AI. So talk to us about the dangers of superficial learning and the risks associated
Mm,
with AI and offloading our thinking to AI.
yeah. They have made some studies with to look in the brain of London taxi drivers. And the taxi drivers in London, they have a map. I don't know if you visit a town for the first time. You go to Paris the first time. Okay, you have the picture of Eiffel, La Tour Eiffel, or maybe Les Champs-Élysées or L'Arc de Triomphe. Okay, and you are going this way. You have the train station,
Mm,
and you know where your hotel is and the metro. So you have a map in your head. So, and if you stay 2-3 days, you have maybe 3-4-5 points, reference points in your head, without map, without GPS. If you go 6 months or 3 months later back to Paris, and you go in other quartier français, quartier français, So you are going to adapt your map of the town of Paris. Ah, yes. Oh, I thought it was here. Ah, no, it was here. You are visiting Paris several times. You construct a map in your mind, and it becomes precisely better. Okay, that's the way we learn, because you need time, and you need to be active, to walk in the streets and to look at things, and it stays. If you are studying the map of Paris on a book, it's quite different. You have other representation of the learning, but it's also a solution. So I mean, what I want to say with all this explanation is that to learn, we need to practice several times to have informations in your memory. And with the Google effect, if you don't need, you can say, okay, it's all on Google. I can take my map and I can look where is this and this. You don't need, and that's the way. It's a risk to use Google, because you don't need to memorize anything. And if you don't have memorized anything, you cannot build something new.
And
You know what
this
I
speaks to
mean?
the this is the semantic memory that you're talking about.
Exactly. You need
Yeah.
informations to build more informations. And if you
Mm.
don't, if you stay in these Google's bubbles, filters, you stay always in this tunnel, and it doesn't develop enough your capabilities and your intelligence.
Toward the end, you talk about self-regulation with AI. So with this, we're not talking about government. We're not talking about any laws passed. I think that we're talking more so about policing yourself, like being a good, um, yeah, I guess having guardrails for how you will and won't use AI tools. I mean, speak a little bit about what is the importance of self-regulation with use of AI and, in the process of learning.
Hmm. Um, I think self-regulation in the science, in the scientific ways, it means you can manage your own learning. Okay,
Mm,
it means you need to define some goals. What do you want to achieve? You need to define how you want to go to this, to have objectives. And for example, if you want to learn a piece of music, you know the Ave Maria from Gounod,
mhm,
French
mhm,
composer?
mhm,
Ave Maria. This one. So
mhm,
you can sing, you have notes, but you don't know Latin. So you think, okay, I want to do it, to learn it myself. What I need? I need to understand the text. I need maybe to hear several times the melody. I need to practice. Maybe I need to have feedbacks from somebody. So these all things, they are goals. And
mhm,
to self-regulation, you need to be aware of these,
mhm,
and you practice and you do it. And then you have feedbacks. Maybe we have made a recording of yourself, and you're
mhm,
listening. It's awful. Oh my God, it's not good this time, and this part I need to do it again. And in this way you make a circle. You begin and begin and begin. You know what I mean?
recursive, yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm
And
curious,
and
like, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, and this is self-regulation.
Mm,
And to learn, you need to do the job yourself. And if you use AI tools to understand,
mm,
to explain, to answer your questions about AI and self-regulation, we are to the point now. If you use AI tools, it should be decided by yourself, controlled. Okay, when I need to practice, I can record me, I can play with a AI tool that analyze my things. It's useful, but you need to decide yourself and to be aware of your own process to learn. I don't know if I'm sure I'm clear enough.
no, that's clear. I get it, and I'm curious. So, another aspect of self-regulation while using AI, particularly in the education environment, that I'm curious. I want to get your take on this is cheating. There are a number of stories here in the U.S. Where some professors feel that they have found their students cheating. In some cases, it was just a student using something like Grammarly to correct their grammar. Um, and in other cases, I guess some people are using it to rewrite, essays, that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk, I mean, like, what is how do you, as a professor, fight against cheating with AI? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's not the question because they are going to use it. If we have a
Mhm.
tools, I think it's difficult to avoid this. We
Mm,
should, as professor, I think we should teach differently. We
mm,
should homework to give homeworks. If I say my students, okay, please read this text and analyze and make a compare with this text for tomorrow, they can put all in ChatGPT and they have a wonderful text, and they don't learn anything. But the job is done, and for a student,
right.
well, so that's the motivation of learning should be understand from the students. That's the first way, I think, to discuss about this, to give the sense of learning. Why do we learn? And if you know why, because it's going in your brain plasticity, it make more sense. And the second way, we should teach differently. It means no homeworks, and give others activities or others challenges to the students,
Mm,
something that ChatGPT cannot replace. It means we should be we should develop creativity and
mm.
critical thinking and make some comparisons. And we speak about task complex skills,
Mm.
complex different level of activities, and this could be a solution.
You just mentioned the idea of, read this book, compare, come back with an essay, no longer good enough. So, I mean, this is what's happening in most universities right now, and most high schools as well. So I agree that many educators are in real time realizing that they're going to have to be more creative and come up with new ways to ensure that the students are learning the material. But in the meantime, I think that there are a lot of people who will not have innovative, creative educators, and they will skate by with these degrees that aren't necessarily rooted in actual learning. They just went through the process. I'm curious. Do you think something has to happen uh, from some authority, or are you just hoping that this just happens organically over time?
No, of course, we need to make it political and
Mm,
ethical. It's very important. And
mm.
without politics, without ethical reflections, we are not going to make the society better. And that's the reason why I wrote the book. It's really a revolution, a cognitive revolution, about laziness, a philosophical revolution. Yeah.
So I want to get to a couple of the stories that I mentioned earlier. So this is the big one, and this story is about Duolingo and the CEO of Duolingo, Louis Van On, recently made a declaration on his LinkedIn account where he basically said, we're going to initiate all these changes using AI. And I actually want to read a couple of things he said. He said, we're going to gradually stop using contractors to do work that AI can handle. That outraged a lot of people. He says, AI use will be part of what we look for in hiring. I'm assuming he means people who are conversant with AI tools. Then he says, AI use will be part of what we evaluate in performance reviews. I'm assuming he doesn't mean AI will conduct performance reviews. I'm assuming he means AI usage, meaning how fluent the people are with AI in their job performance is. I mean, that's my optimistic, hopeful take on that. Then he says headcount will only be given. I'm assuming he means new headcount will only be given if a team cannot automate more of their work. That's pretty rigid. And then finally, he says most functions will have specific initiatives to fundamentally change how they work. So this is all kind of like, this is kind of normal now in the US. Many CEOs are making statements about, I think it was the last one was, oh God, not Salesforce, it was Shopify. The CEO of Shopify made a similar statement a couple of months ago. And it's become common now for uh, CEOs, I guess, to let shareholders know, let investors know, we're ahead of the time, or we're with the times. We're moving with AI, but it's freaking some workers out. It's also making some consumers concerned as to what the final product will be. And in the case of Duolingo, I think this is particularly important because, well, before I dive deeper, I just want to let the listeners and viewers know you speak, I think, 5, 6 languages. How many? 15? Like, how many what languages do you speak?
Uh, the only one that I can manage is French.
Okay, well,
No,
yeah, sure.
that's my mother tongue is French, as you have
So
listened. You can
I
listen,
know
but
it's French, German,
I speak German.
Italian.
Yeah, German and Italian and Swiss German. That's a dialect. And if you and a little bit Spanish and Portuguese too. But
Yeah, so that's, I don't know, that's 6 or 7. I lost count. That's a lot. No Duolingo needed for you. So that's why I was particularly interested in speaking to you about this story, because I've used Duolingo a ton in the past just to practice, just to keep my Japanese, somewhat fresh, because I pretty much never use it in the States. And, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. I'll be honest, I have rarely met, and maybe I'm just an outlier. I rarely met someone who who told me that they learned their language from Duolingo. I've met people who said they learned phrases from Duolingo, like polite phrases, but actually learned a language from Duolingo. I haven't seen that, and I'm sure they exist. I'm sure, someone will come in and, oh no, here's a YouTube video of this guy who learned Duolingo, learned the language through Duolingo.
yeah,
For
but
me, well, I was just gonna say, for me, what you said earlier about Duolingo having this kind of static learning system, that was the stumbling block for me to really getting a lot out of Duolingo. So now that they're talking about adding an AI layer to this, that makes me wonder, why not? Why shouldn't I just use ChatGPT? I can actually use ChatGPT to practice Japanese now because it has like the vocal function where it can speak back to you. And I've actually done I've had several sessions where I switched the language on my ChatGPT on my smartphone, and I just start having conversations, and it can switch back and forth. And I'll say something like, did I get that phrase right? Tell me in English. Oh, no, yes, you did, but the pronunciation on that word was incorrect. Do you want me to like help you? And so
yeah.
so but if Duolingo is doing this, number one, the product without AI wasn't, in my opinion, particularly efficacious. And number two, if they're going to be super AI enhanced now, shouldn't I just use ChatGPT? So I don't know. What do you think about this development with Duolingo?
I've tried Duolingo, and a friend of mine is learning. He speaks German and is learning French with Duolingo, and so I could analyze and look a little bit how it works. It was very interesting because it's very superficial, and I mean there are several tools, and Duolingo is one of them. But I'm not particularly against, or if it helps the people, if they have the impression they make some progress, the motivation is here. Yes, but I think you can have some progress at the beginning, and after a while you stay on the level because you need something else. It's not rich enough.
The other story I wanted to touch upon is this idea of what degree or what focus you should concentrate on in the university. So recently, one of the people at Google's Notebook LM team basically talked about the idea that a humanities degree, meaning a non-technical degree, might actually be valuable in the future.
Mm.
The current narrative here, at least here in the States, is that a STEM degree is advisable if you're going to go to college at all. Like many people are now beginning to think about, do I even need to go to college? And many of the things maybe I can just learn online or intern, particularly with regard to coding. Um, but if you are going to go into debt and pay the money, here, the prices are exorbitant for college. I know it's less so in Europe, Western Europe, but the conversation has been, if you're going to go to tech or if you're going to go to college, focus on tech or science or something in that range. But this person at Notebook LM is talking about the idea of a philosophy degree or some sort of maybe anthropology, like some sort of humanities degree, because as we're seeing more increasingly, the coding is being taken over by AI systems and fewer people are needed in that area. So this whole the trope of particularly on social media, when people get laid off from their creative job, someone will sarcastically say, "Learn to code," learn a coding language.
Yeah.
But with AI, that's no longer necessarily the answer. So this person from Google Notebook LM is saying, maybe as you kind of referenced earlier, being AI wranglers, maybe being the people with the philosophy and kind of like the human touch, the human perspective might be the way to go. What say you to that?
The way to adapt the education is we need to do it. We have the industrial revolution, in 1800, 1800. And this was with the machines, and all the people were afraid, oh, I don't have a job anymore, the machines is doing my job. But the main skill of the human being is to adapt. So I think we are going to adapt, and I hope I'm positive and optimistic human being. So I think it's going well in the direction to think about what we need to learn, and they are the soft skills. I mean, creativity, the emotional education is very important, and psychology, to understand how to communicate with others, to express feeling, and to how because we are in a stressed world, and we need to come back to the essential feelings and communications, because a lot of problems are linked with not good enough communication, I think.
Would you tell a hypothetical child of yours who was thinking of getting a degree in philosophy versus a degree in mechanical engineering, um, at this point, do you think a degree in philosophy, to the point of the story from the Google Notebook LM people, do you
Mm.
think a degree in philosophy is now obsolete? Is it, or do you think he has a point?
I mean, the creativity of the human being should give us the capacity to develop new jobs.
Hmm.
And you need a consolidation of your general knowledge. And after that, you can go and try and develop a way.
Yeah, I personally I agree with what the executive from Google Notebook LM hinted at, because what I found, particularly interviewing so many AI engineers and startup founders here, is that often they're so busy on the technology, part of it, that some of them haven't spent a lot of time on the philosophical underpinnings and implications of what they're working on. And so I think increasingly as the engineer jobs decrease, which even I think Microsoft, I think was it Microsoft? It was Microsoft or Meta recently said that, I'm pretty sure it was Microsoft. Satya Nadella recently said something like 30% of their code was generated by AI in the past year. If that is true, and if AI continues apace at its current developmental, rhythm, then that will only get better, and more code will be generated by AI, which means less, STEM jobs potentially. So I think at this point, this is probably if you're building a portfolio or a bulwark or some sort of kind of a moat for the future, the humanities might be a place to kind of like place your bet. It's not a sure bet. Everything is in flux right now. We're in kind of uncharted waters right now, but I think humanities could be a good bet. So in that respect, I agree with them. So Sarah, I really appreciate you joining us. Where can people find your book, The Learning Revolution?
Thank you. It's on Amazon.com and also on my website for the Europe people or French, Swiss people. They can go to my website www.sarahchardonnens.ch.
Do you have several editions, or is it just in English for now?
No, it's just in English for now. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, Sarah, again, thank you for joining us. And you can check out previous episodes of the 100-Year Podcast at 100year.com. You can check out our newsletter at 100year.substack.com. And you can also check us out on Spotify, where we're not just uploading audio. You can also check us out on video. Again, Sarah, thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.